Have you ever heard a sound in a language that just completely stopped you in your tracks? A sound that made you go, wait, what was that? Well, today we're diving into some of the most fascinating sounds in all of human speech, the click consonants of Africa. We're going to find out where they come from, how they work, and, maybe most importantly, why their future is so fragile. So what do these clicks actually sound like? Honestly, there's no better way to understand than to just listen. Here's a great example from Sekile Dube, a Zulu speaker, breaking down 3 of the clicks in his language. And what you're hearing, those aren't just little noises or exclamations. Nope, those are consonants, woven right into the words, just like a P or a K is in English. Hearing that, you can't help but wonder, right? Where on earth did they come from? How did such an incredible feature of speech even develop in the first place? Well, that's the big linguistic mystery we're going to try and solve today. So here is our roadmap. We'll kick things off by defining what a click sound really is. Then, we're going to clear up a super common misconception before tracing these sounds all the way back to their source. We'll see how they spread to other languages, find out there's way more to these languages than just clicks, and then finish up by looking at their very fragile future. All right, first things first, let's get on the same page about what a click actually is in linguistics. Because, it's a whole lot more than the tsk sound we might make when we disapprove of something. And here is the absolute key. In these languages, a click isn't just a sound effect. It's a full-on consonant, every bit as important as B, P, or T is for us. It's a core piece of the word, and it's made by creating a little pocket of air with your tongue and then releasing it with a suction pop. And get this, it's not just one sound. Linguists have classified at least 5 main types of clicks, and each one has its own official phonetic symbol. You've got the dental click, which is that familiar tsk sound. The lateral click is the one you might use to call a horse. Then there are these sharp alveolar pops, softer post-alveolar ones, and even a bilabial click, which, sounds just like a kiss. Each one is a totally distinct tool in the language's sound kit. Okay, now let's dive into a really common point of confusion. Sometimes the best way to understand what something is to first get clear on what it isn't. This is perfect. It's a real question someone posted online. They thought they'd heard click sounds in the Shona language, which is spoken in Zimbabwe. And it's a super common mix-up, but it's a great one because it actually points us right towards the true story of these sounds. And here's the solution to that little puzzle. It turns out the main dialects of Shona don't use clicks at all. The confusion happens because its neighbors, the Nguni languages like Zulu and Xhosa, are absolutely famous for them. So this mix-up actually helps us because it tells us that clicks are very specific to certain language groups. They aren't just everywhere in the region. Okay, so now that we've cleared that up, we can get to the real heart of the matter. If languages like Zulu actually borrowed their clicks, well, who did they borrow them from? Let's meet the original innovators. The answer lies with the Khoisan languages. This is a group of languages spoken by indigenous peoples all across southern Africa. And while their territory has shrunk over time, they once covered a massive area. And their most famous, most distinctive feature is the original and incredibly widespread use of click consonants. Now, take a look at this number, 70%. On its own, it might not look like much, but in the context of a language, what it represents is absolutely staggering. 70%. Let that sink in for a second. That's roughly how many words in many Khoisan languages actually begin with a click. This isn't just a quirky, occasional feature. It is the absolute foundation of their vocabulary. A frequency like that is how we know for sure that we've found the true heartland of click languages. So that brings us to the next obvious question, right? If clicks started with the Khoisan peoples, how on earth did they jump into completely different language families, like the Bantu languages that Zulu and Xhosa belong to? Well, the answer is a classic story of what happens when people and languages meet and mix. It starts at the source, the Khoisan languages. Then, over centuries of trade, intermarriage, and just daily life, their neighbors, like the early Bantu speakers, heard these sounds. They must have found them useful or maybe even prestigious, and so they started to adopt them, weaving them right into the fabric of their own languages. What's so cool is how selective this whole process was. This wasn't some all-or-nothing deal. The original Khoisan languages have this full toolkit of up to 5 different click types. But look at how other languages picked and chose. Gisiriko and Ye, which are Bantu languages, they adopted 4 of them. Zulu and Xhosa took 3. And Dahalo, a Cushitic language way up north, just took 1. Each number here tells a unique story of contact and influence. But, to just think of these as the click languages, is to miss out on an even more amazing story. Because the clicks, they're just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to their complexity. Okay, this chart right here puts it all into perspective. English, the language I'm speaking right now, has around 24 consonants. The Khoisan language Nama has 32. But then you get to XQO with an unbelievable 126 distinct consonants. No, that is not a typo. It is one of the largest, most complex sound systems of any language on the entire planet. But here is a massive plot twist. We've been using this term Khoisan, but it's not a language family in the way that, say, the Romance languages are. It's not one big family tree. It's more like a forest of completely separate trees. Despite sharing clicks, the grammar and the core vocabulary of these languages are so wildly different that most linguists now think many of them aren't related to each other at all. And this table just makes that diversity crystal clear. I mean, just look at the words for something as basic as drink or laugh across these different groups. There's no shared root word there. It's not like looking at agua in Spanish and eau in French and seeing that family resemblance. No, these look like completely separate languages that just happen to share this one incredibly unique feature. And that brings us to our final and, honestly, most critical section. We've seen just how unique and complex this whole linguistic world is. But what's its status today? The reality is pretty stark. Over the last few hundred years, many of these Khoisan languages have just gone silent forever. Because of huge social and economic pressures, the vast majority of those that are still with us are severely endangered. Fewer and fewer children are learning to speak them. So let's just quickly recap what we've discovered. First, clicks are real, complex consonants, the very building blocks of words. Second, they got their start with the diverse Khoisan peoples before spreading to other languages through contact. Third, Khoisan itself isn't one big happy family, but a collection of stunningly diverse languages. And finally, and most importantly, this entire unique linguistic heritage is in real danger of disappearing. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. Each of these languages, with all their unique sounds and structures, represents a completely distinct way of seeing and describing the world. And so the real question we have to ask ourselves is this: when their echo finally fades for good, what irreplaceable human worlds, what unique ways of knowing do we all lose right along with them?